Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is February 11th, and we're on page 35 in your magazines. Today, we have a really delicious topic.
Well, we have our delectable differences between dark white and milk chocolate.
I don't eat chocolate.
Really?
Right.
Really? None at all? Was it even as a child, or is it something you've grown out of?
It's something that I decided to do at a certain point. And it was in Europe. So here, we talk about the differences between American chocolate and European chocolate.
We're going to get to that.
We're going to get to that. We'll get to that, but I don't eat chocolate.
Was it? Hold on. You got to tell us. What was the point? Like, you were eating like this delicious piece of chocolate, and it's like, this can never be beaten. Or is it like, why am I still doing this?
It was more the latter. Yeah, I was 19 years old.
19?
I was on an exchange program to Germany. I did an extra year of high school in Germany at the gymnasium in Hamburg.
Yes.
And Europeans eat a lot of chocolate.
Right.
I have to tell you, they really like chocolate. They like dark chocolate. We're going to learn about it in the article. I didn't get the appeal because I grew up on milk chocolate. It's sweet and something kids love. Dark chocolate is often bitter. And I think if you're going to drink something bitter, have coffee. I mean, why do you have to make your chocolate so bitter?
That's funny because I also grew up on American chocolate, and it's kind of sickly sweet, if you ask my opinion.
It is.
And then when I tried like a proper piece of good dark chocolate, I thought, what have I been doing with my life?
Yeah.
Like, why am I eating this milk chocolate? This is much better.
Yes.
So I kind of maybe went in a different avenue.
Now, actually, people who are connoisseurs, I think they will go in that direction. Dark chocolate is the best. And we're going to find out why in the article. What happened was, after I got to Germany, I started putting on weight.
Okay.
And we went to this language camp, and they just stuffed us. They gave us all kinds of stuff. We went on hikes. They'd give us like these little packages of kekse, which are butter cookies and stuff. And then I realized my clothes were getting tight. I went to my host family. I continued in the habits, and I said, this has got to stop. And so the first place that I stopped was chocolate. Okay.
Well, that's a good place to stop.
If I don't eat chocolate, that will be one less source of a lot of sugary calories.
Right.
So that's how it happened.
That's
and
funny.
It's not like I never, ever, ever eat chocolate. Occasionally I have, and since then, but probably in the last 3 years, I can't remember eating any chocolate.
You don't seek it out.
I avoid it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's a really interesting story. I wonder how many of you also have had that experience where you're no longer. Maybe it was something you enjoyed, and it's like, you know what? It's time to end this, and then you just never go back. I suppose everyone has something of that experience.
Right. In the past, I would occasionally, somebody would offer me candy or a piece of cake, and then But now I don't even take it. I just refuse it.
Oh, well, let's get into our article. We got plenty more. Because I feel like we do 22 minutes on just this topic right here. But
that's right.
We have an article, don't we?
Right. Actually, there was a little discussion on Facebook. They were talking about how to market chocolate chip cookies. And they said, well, we're going to have giant chocolate chip cookies and everybody's going to love these. And I said, you better do some market research. Not everybody agrees with you. And they just freaked out. They thought, what do you mean? Everybody loves chocolate chip cookies. I said, not everybody.
Yeah, it's one of those paint the world with a broad stroke, where I would say most people say they like chocolate, but there are people that definitely don't. You're not the first person I've heard to say this, but I would say the average person. If you walked up to, quote, average Joe and asked them, give me your opinion on chocolate, I dare say most people say they're into it.
That's how they answered, and I get it, but I think I gave up not just chocolate, but I just totally went off sugar.
Right.
And if you're not eating sugar, I think you better forget about chocolate.
Yeah, and then going back to it, it's kind of it's hard to go back to.
Why would I want to do that?
Right.
Our title again is The Delectable Differences Between Dark, White, and Milk Chocolate. First paragraph. Chocolate is a delicious treat, liked by most people, and it has a history almost as rich as its velvety smooth taste. Around 4,000 years ago, the Olmec people of ancient Mesoamerica were the first to make chocolate from the cacao plant. Their chocolate was in liquid form, and they drank it during rituals. Later on, the Mayans mixed in chilies and called it chocolatl, which meant bitter water. The 15th century Aztecs used cacao beans as currency. In 1528, the famous explorer Hernán Cortés brought chocolate to Spain. There, people added sugar, honey, and later on milk in order to reduce its bitter taste.
Today, there are 3 kinds of chocolate that most people are familiar with: dark, milk, and white chocolate. They all start with the cacao pods produced by the evergreen cacao trees, with the specific differences attributed to the ingredients added and the way the cacao beans are processed.
Dark chocolate in its purest form should only contain cacao beans, cocoa butter, and occasionally sugar. It should have a cacao percentage of between 60% and 100%. It is rich in antioxidants, is good for your heart, and is said to improve one's mood. Milk chocolate starts out much the same way as dark chocolate, but with added sugar and milk powder. Milk chocolate bars in the United States must contain 10% cocoa. In the European Union, EU, the number is doubled. White chocolate forgoes the cacao beans and is only made up of cocoa butter, milk powder, and sugar. White chocolate bars in both the US and EU must contain at least 20% cocoa butter and no more than 55% sugar. So if you've gone off sugar, man, you better stay away from these. Okay, so back to our title again. Delectable means really, really good, really delicious. It's delectable. It's a very intense word. So if it's extremely good, instead of saying it's delicious, and by the way, don't say very delicious, because that's putting an extra intensifier in. Delicious is already extremely good, good tasting. The same is true of French. When I was learning French, I was told the same thing. You don't add very. Delectable is even stronger than that. It is so good. It's delectable, and you can just see that pleasure on someone's face. Differences between dark, white, and milk chocolate. So there are 3 different kinds of chocolate. Technically, white chocolate is not really chocolate at all, and we'll explain it more in the article. So let's go back to our first paragraph. Chocolate is a delicious treat liked by most people, and it has a history almost as rich as its velvety, smooth taste. I found this sentence a little hard to process because of this little metaphor in the second, or simile in the second part of the sentence. So chocolate is a delicious treat liked by most people. Every time I see that, I get a little irritated. Like, okay, maybe it is most people, but man, there's a lot of people who just don't eat it, who avoid sweets. Okay, and it has a history almost as rich. To have a rich history, that means lots of things happened and people wrote them down, and it's really a cultural good. It was really well developed. People learn this history because a lot was recorded and a lot of things happened. And velvety smooth taste. You have to know what velvet is. It is a kind of cloth that has, it's almost like little hair sticking up. We call a nap, N-A-P. And it's not just sleeping in the afternoon. Nap means that if you brush it one way, the appearance will change because it changes the way the light shines on it. So you can rub it one way and then it will reflect light. And if you rub it the other way, it looks darker because it's no longer reflecting light in the same way. So velvet has a nap. You can learn that word. If you talk to Black people about their hair, they say, oh, my hair is really nappy. That means it's very, very curly.
If you've ever seen a very high-quality Santa suit, that is usually made of velvet. And while we're on the topic of dying on the hills of minority opinions, I cannot stand the way velvet feels. There's something about that material. A lot of people consider velvet like probably as the
luxurious.
Nicest, right?
Yeah.
Almost to the point of like silk. But to me, I mean, if I die and go to hell, I'm pretty sure Satan will wrap me in velvet. It is such
you really dislike
something about it. It just drives me nuts. I don't know what it is.
Texture.
Yeah, the texture really, it makes my whole body just tingle thinking about it.
If you don't know the word, texture is spelled T-E-X-T-U-R-E, T-E-X-T-U-R-E. It refers to the way something feels. You can also see texture.
Right.
Right. And don't give Chris anything made of velvet. Yeah. He does not like the texture, to put it lightly. Okay, so velvety smooth, that is something we'll use to describe, for example, a very rich drink, like a milkshake or like thick cocoa or something like that. It's like velvet. It's very soft and creamy. So some people really like, or most people, it says, like chocolate, and it has a very, very rich, interesting, eventful history. Next sentence. Around 4,000 years ago, the Olmec people of ancient Mesoamerica were the first to make chocolate from the cacao plant. So Olmec is an interesting word to know because it's one of the many peoples of Central America. Meso just means middle. Middle America is what we now call Central America. It goes a little bit into southern Mexico and a little bit into South America. But this middle part that connects the two Americas is called Mesoamerica or Middle America. So there was a people, and already 4,000 years ago, they had discovered the cacao plant and how to make a bitter drink from it. So they were the ones who discovered it and developed it, and they're the ones the Europeans got it from. Next sentence, their chocolate was in liquid form, and they drank it during rituals. So they mixed it with hot water. It was not so thick the way we drink it now, and they did not add sugar. It was very bitter. It was a ritual drink.
So the Olmec people, we generally learn about South American history. We'll learn about three kinds of people, and we'll see them all in this article today. The Olmec, the Mayans, and the Aztecs. And my students always found this difficult to remember who came first, who came second, and who came third. But there's a really easy way. The Olmec looks like the word old, O-L-D. And then you have the middle group of established people there, and those were the Mayans, and the word middle starts with M. And then finally, our last major empire we would talk about then are the Aztecs, and they were after everybody else. And of course, Aztec starts with A, and so does the word after.
Okay, I'll mention a fancy word related to this because you might see it if you read anything about these people. It's the language that the Aztecs spoke, and it is still spoken today. It's called Nahuatl, and it's spelled capital N-A-H-U-A-T-L. So you'll see a lot of atl words from Nahuatl. Atl. That's kind of unusual. We don't have it in English. So Nahuatl. And I believe that's the language of chocolatl because it's got that TL at the end. But many languages shared that same kind of word. You will see it. So, and the Mayans are also in existence today. Many of the Mayan languages are still being spoken. Many of them do not even speak Spanish. And some of them try to go to the U.S., and often it's illegal. And when they get caught, they can't find interpreters because not most of them will know Spanish, but they won't know the Mayan languages that are spoken by the locals. So these people are still around. Next sentence, later on, the Mayans mixed in chilies and called it chocolatl, which meant bitter water. So they started out with just the bitter water with the cacao beans, stuff from them or the essence of cacao beans mixed in. And later on, they made it a little spicier. They put in chilies. Now, this kind of mixture still exists in Mexico. I lived in Puebla for a while. They have a special kind of sauce. Sauce in that area of the world is called mole, M-O-L-E, mole. And the mole poblano, the mole from Puebla, the place where I lived, it is a mixture of chocolate and chilies and turkey. So it's a lot of stuff you don't expect in spices and things. And they told me, Karen, you better not eat it. It's really rich, but it's something they're really famous for.
Yeah, mole is really quite delicious. If you seek it out, it's very hard to find it in Taipei. It's probably even harder to find it elsewhere in Taiwan. But there are some restaurants out there that serve a good mole. And if you do find people from South America or Middle America, Mexico, they will let you know, and they'll help you out. While we're talking about this particular drink, this was usually reserved just for royals. And so other things added in there were vanilla. They had other spices. Everyone else was stuck drinking kind of what we would call mead, which was fermented honey, M-E-A-D. And it sounds really delicious if I could be completely honest. So you have chocolate and you have spices and vanilla and all these other things in there. And it's spicy and hot. And I just want to drink it in the winter.
But there's no sugar.
But there's no sugar. It will be bitter, indeed.
In fact, I do have cocoa sometimes with zero sugar that I can take. Okay, next sentence. The 15th century Aztecs used cacao beans as currency. So the cacao beans were so important in their culture, they used them as money. Next sentence. In 1528, the famous explorer Hernán Cortés brought chocolate to Spain. And boy, did it ever go over well in Europe?
There's a whole bunch of things that went over well in Europe. This is actually what we call the Great Exchange. And this is not, if you Google this, you may come up with a lot of Christian imagery. But the Great Exchange is when the old world explorers came over to the new world and they found all these new plants. And they brought things that, they obviously needed supplies on their ships. And they brought things with them and then they took them home. A kind of lot like we ship things in the world today. You fill up a trailer full of goods. You take it to a place. And this boat doesn't take back an empty container. Mm-hmm. They fill it up things from that place. And then they take it somewhere else. And that's kind of what happened here. And chocolate, pumpkins, potatoes, corn,
tomatoes,
tons of incredibly common things. Pineapple, tons of foods that we eat every single day came from the New World, and then pretty much all the famous meats that most people eat would come from the Old World, and lots of diseases were brought to the Americas. Horses, apples, none of those existed in the New World until the explorers brought them over with them. And I got to say, that's a really pivotal moment in history, and we're all the better for it. Except for the diseases.
Yeah, because there is no sunlight without shadow. There was good and bad, and there was absolutely a lot of bad. But in our modern life, there are things that we can't imagine living without. Chocolate's one of them. Coffee is one of them. You imagine Irish cooking without potatoes.
Right.
That's all they ate, and that's why they died during the potato famine. Imagine Italian cooking without tomatoes. Tomatoes are recent.
Yeah, think of all the foods that Taiwanese eat from the Great Exchange. You have we're not supposed to speak Chinese. Tomato egg. I'm trying to think.
Tomato egg? Oh, yeah. Fried. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There's a whole bunch of foods, but I can't think of how to say them in English.
And think of how much corn we use in North America. It's in just about everything. Corn syrup, corn starch, in addition to just corn. So these foods really, really changed. It changed Westerners, both in Europe and in the Americas. Okay, next sentence. There, people added sugar, honey, and later on milk in order to reduce its bitter taste. I think this is interesting because very often when a new cuisine enters a country, they often sweeten it to make it more palatable.
Right.
Because for years in the U.S., now it's still true, but not as bad as before. I used to work as a waitress in Chinese restaurants, and most of the cooking was done with a lot of thick, gooey sauce. And when real Taiwanese would come, or Chinese, they would go, this is Chinese food. This isn't how we eat it. It's because a lot of foreign cooking, you will add sugar and then it's more palatable. And that is true of Taiwan too. Like a lot of the breads here are really sweet. So a lot of Western food here also ends up sweet. So keep that in mind. You probably want to look for the genuine thing.
Our next paragraph begins. Today, there are 3 kinds of chocolate that most people are familiar with: dark, milk, and white chocolate. However, that's not all. In fact, Karen, we were talking before the program that, there's a kind of chocolate they didn't bring up, and it is called?
Pink chocolate.
Pink chocolate. That's funny because I thought orange chocolate.
I hadn't heard of orange chocolate. And Chris
I had never heard of pink chocolate.
That's right. But I learned about pink chocolate from an Ivy lesson.
That's funny. Orange chocolate is very popular in Buffalo. It's popular. I thought it was popular up where you grew up, too. Kind of our colder northern areas, they had orange chocolate. And it's still very available in Buffalo, where I'm from. And you can occasionally find a chocolate ball shaped like an orange, and I suspect it probably tastes like orange chocolate, but I confess never having bought it. I saw it in the Western supermarkets here in Taipei.
So it's not chocolate with orange flavor added?
It tastes like the orange rind. It tastes like the outside of the peel, so it has like an orange zest in the chocolate. So there's like in your throat, you would taste like kind of like an orange if you ate some of the zest. It has a very unique flavor. I love getting a piece of it now and then.
So they've added flavorings to it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it's added flavoring. But originally it was zest, which is the outside part of the orange.
Pink chocolate is different. It's a totally different bean. The bean is pink, and the chocolate that you make from it is pink.
Interesting.
So that's not due to any added ingredients. So that's what's different about that. It's a very new kind of chocolate. I think Nestle was promoting it. So they didn't mention those. So orange chocolate I can understand because they've added flavoring. But pink chocolate they should have mentioned.
Let's continue. They all start with the cacao pods produced by the evergreen cacao trees, with the specific differences attributed to the ingredients added and the way the cacao beans are processed.
All right, so they're saying that the way you process the beans, and there's a lot of processing involved in beans, and Chris said that he watched a YouTube video that kind of turned him off.
Yeah, so I watched a video. How would you make homemade chocolate? I was just curious about it. And you get the pods and you rip it open, and it looks like somebody ripped open your head and there's like a brain in there. It's a graphic almost. It was really, I suspected it would be a little messy. I knew of the process, but I didn't know what the process actually looked like. And it's pretty disgusting, in all honesty.
Similarly, the process for processing coffee beans involves some really awful chemicals.
Right.
So you look that up if you want to be turned off coffee. Let's go on to our last paragraph. Dark chocolate in its purest form should only contain cacao beans, cocoa butter, and occasionally sugar. This kind of surprised me because if you grow up in the States, chocolate is full of sugar. So
Full of sugar.
Occasionally sugar. Yeah, well, that's European dark chocolate, and we're going to learn about that soon. It should have a cacao percentage of between 60% and 100%. Now, this percentage is really important, and I didn't realize what a big deal it was till I went to Europe. They really care about that percentage.
Yeah, in fact, in Taiwan several years ago, they had this multi-pack, and I really enjoyed this. There were maybe 5 mini chocolate bars, and each increasing in cacao percentage and reduced sugar. And I think like the highest was like 50-50. It was really sweet. But then you had, I think, like 90% pure cacao,
Wow.
and it was extremely bitter. It was almost like eating cocoa powder. And it was just such a lovely pack. I enjoyed it so much. And I was like, this is just the best food. And unfortunately, they don't sell it anymore. But I hope it's something that comes back. I really liked it.
Wow, so you were okay with the 90%.
It was very bitter, but it was like, this is such a unique experience. It was a unique thing that I had not tried before. I preferred, like, honestly, my favorite was like 80, but the 90 was like, whoa, this is so, it was like eating bitter melon. That's what
or
it
like
was like.
Espresso, a really strong espresso.
It was really strong.
It is rich in antioxidants, is good for your heart, and is said to improve one's mood. Now, I assumed it was mainly because of all the sugar. That will give you a temporary high, a sugar high. But some people say just the pure cocoa is good for you because it's an antioxidant, good for your health, and good for your heart.
This was actually given to soldiers in World War II for this very reason. They added tons of sugar. Hershey made lots of money off this. And it was easier because coffee, you had to use water. It had to be hot. It was too much trouble. So they would just feed soldiers lots and lots of chocolate, which had fed a sugar addiction that when they came back, that they carried over with.
Oh, boy. It's just like a drug addiction, actually. Milk chocolate starts out much the same way as dark chocolate, but with added sugar and milk powder. So they're similar, but then you put in a lot of sugar and put in a lot of milk powder, and that really changes it a lot. Milk chocolate bars in the United States must contain 10% cocoa. After you've been reading about the 80 and 90%, you think 10% cocoa is really lame. In the European Union, EU, the number is doubled. So if you're going to call it milk chocolate in the European Union, it has to be at least 20% cocoa. White chocolate forgoes the cacao beans and is only made up of cocoa butter, milk powder, and sugar. And I always felt white chocolate was a real disappointment. It has
I agree.
No chocolate flavor whatsoever. What is the point?
What am I doing? What am I doing here?
Yeah, if I'm just going to eat sugar or what, okay. So white chocolate bars in both the U.S. and EU must contain at least 20% cocoa butter and no more than 55% sugar. So those are the rules. Those are laws, actually, for what you have to put into your product if you label it in a certain way. We've got a few questions for you. Number 1.
According to the passage, which of the following statements is true?
And the answer is letter D. White chocolate in the United States is made up of, at most, 55% sugar. Number 2.
Which word in the passage means the containers where beans are found?
Now, this is not multiple choice. You have to find a word, but fortunately it's just one word, and the word is pods, P-O-D-S, pods.
Let's do number 3. Please quote a sentence from the passage to explain that dark chocolate is beneficial to people.
This time you have to copy a longer sentence, and here it is. It is rich in antioxidants, is good for your heart, and is said to improve one's mood. Number 4. Fill in the blanks with the information contained in the passage about dark chocolate, milk chocolate, and white chocolate.
So we have 2 categories, the type and the ingredients. A is blank, but our ingredients are cacao beans, cocoa butter, sugar, and blank. And because we have sugar, that's the key word, our answer is?
Milk chocolate is the type, and the other ingredient is milk powder.
Our second type is dark chocolate. Our ingredients are cacao beans, cocoa butter, and sometimes blank. Our answer is?
Okay, they already told us it's dark chocolate, and the other ingredient is sometimes sugar.
And finally, D is blank for our type, and then lastly, cocoa butter, milk powder, and sugar.
And we don't see any cacao beans listed here, so that's white chocolate. And that's all we have for you today. Please tune in next time. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.